This is going to be the best individual sales training that you're going to watch as an online coach. I've scaled and I've collected over 7 figures and 8 figures amongst my clients and amongst myself. And I'm going to be showing you exactly what you can do to build a sales team, learn sales, build systems, etc. And I broke it down into 6 individual parts that I'm going to be walking you through today. So let's jump into the first part right here. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to be talking about is all about sales leverage, okay? Things that we can apply to our business that directly influence us selling more without actually having to sell more or get better at sales or know some crazy objection handling secret that's gonna make your prospects not wanna say, I wanna think about it, okay? Sales leverage, okay? So the first thing about sales leverage is simply opening your calendar more, okay? Calendar more, okay? The thing is, most people are only taking, calls from maybe Monday to Friday. And a lot of people think that if they max their, they make their calendar so unavailable so that they can invoke a level of status and they only sell during this time period. And if they're not, then, they're this high status human being. Open your calendar up. Okay, I hate to say it. You just have, the stats from all of the companies that I've worked with just show that if you're taking more calls, you are going to generate more sales. And that is the exact same thing with availability as well. Okay, so sell from Monday to Sunday, Monday to Monday, sell the entire week. So for example, let's say you're only selling from Monday to Friday, okay? You are only pretty much selling 5 out of 7 days. You're missing out on 30% of potential calls, okay, that could be coming in on the weekends, on Saturday and Sundays. And a lot of you guys, I don't want to take calls on Sunday. Well, the stats pretty much show that if we're having these calls and we're missing out on 30%, then all of these calls are going to be stacked to Monday. And now you're pretty much betting on yourself to perform on Monday. Your calendar's stacked, it's crazy busy, you have no time for anything else. So I would recommend that teams always distribute across the entire week so that's an even workflow for the entire week, and you can take calls throughout the entire week, okay? So that's the first thing. Open up your calendar. And the next thing that I'm about to share with you is probably the most important thing that if you can nail down, it will be the most leveraged thing that you can do in terms of just getting more sales in general, okay? And that is all about response time, okay? How quickly you respond to leads. So I have so many clients of mine who are like, the leads are not responding, blah, blah, blah. I called these people and they're not responding, but they'll call them 6 hours, a day, 2 days after they initially opt in. Let's say someone opts in, Saturday at 4 p.m. I'll call them, Sunday afternoon, or I'll call them, later on in the week, okay, or early in the week. And the stats pretty much show that if you take more, okay, than 1 minute to respond to an opt-in or a lead or someone who shows interest, fills out the form, whatever it is, if you take more than 1 minute, the percentage of you closing them goes down by 390% if it's more than 1 minute. So on the contrary, if it's less than 1 minute, it's the exact same upside as well. Okay, so if you can respond in less than 1 minute, you have now a 390% more chance to close that lead. 390%. Which is absolutely crazy, okay? And the thing is, if you are taking longer than 5 minutes to respond to a lead, okay, then what happens is now your percentage of closing goes down by 80%, okay? So the thing is, a lot of people who reach out to companies, or they're like, I'm in a state of pain, I want, someone to help me with getting in shape, or I want someone to help me with this problem. They reach out to a bunch of different people And what happens a lot of the time is the first people who are able to capture this pain, capture this level of person who's like in a state of like, oh, I'm nervous about where I am in my life. Oh, I don't really like my situation. They're in a state of pain. First person to reach out, have that conversation, go through that sort of sales process with them is most likely going to close them. Okay. For example, when I was in Japan, okay, we went there extremely last minute. So we were in Thailand, okay, we were in Bangkok, and we're like, you know what? It was my buddy's birthday. He was with us. He's like, hey, we're gonna go to Japan. So next day, we're gonna book a flight for Japan. So literally, we booked a flight 6 hours in advance, okay? Booked a flight. We're figuring out our hotel like super last minute. We were calling around a bunch of hotels, seeing what was out there, and there was barely any people who were like showing availability. And we just pretty much went with the person or the hotels that had availability, that responded, that we were able to inquire or able to actually talk to a front desk person. Okay. Same thing with for example, my girlfriend, when she goes and gets her nails done or her hair done and she's in another location, she's just gonna call a bunch of places, see who picks up and say, hey, can I get in today? No? Okay, calls another one. Hey, can I get in today? No. Same thing, okay? So a lot of you guys think that, I can respond later, blah, 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 blah. But the stats clearly show, they did actually a massive study on this, okay? And the stats clearly point to the people who are able to respond quickly are most likely to capitalize on the actual lead. You have to remember, these people are in a state of pain usually. An ad or piece of content or whatever, when someone is taking action on some sort of marketing that you're doing, they're not taking action just because it's like, oh, this is kind of cool. They're probably taking action because whatever messaging you put out resonated with their pain and invoked a level of pain, and that pain is potentially driving them to try to reach a level of pleasure, okay? And the really good salespeople, the really good companies are able to quickly capitalize on that pain because you got to remember, pain for a lot of people, especially in the fitness coaching space, is very temporary. Oh, I want to lose weight one day, and then the next day it's like, oh, you know what? I can kind of stay a little bit overweight. I don't really want to try to, it's too much effort, blah, 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 blah. They justify it to themselves, and then they forget about it, and then people are reaching out to them, and they're out of the pain. Okay, so reach out to your leads quickly, okay? The next thing is all about how to handle leads, okay? So we call it feed the best people, okay? And what I mean by this is there is such thing as more and less qualified leads, especially when you're running ads or especially if you're doing some sort of content. There are going to be leads that come in, okay, that you're going to be able to kind of like rank and see, okay, this guy right here, he is a 10 out of 10 lead. He is a great lead. He's most likely going to close, okay? And then there's another lead that you're going to be like, okay, this lead is a horrible lead. This is a crap lead. This is not a good lead, or it's an okay lead, okay? And the thing is, when you are getting these leads, these leads are coming in, what most companies will do is they'll just round robin these leads. So they'll take these leads and they'll put it into a system, okay, like a Calendly or a booking system, and these leads will just get randomly passed off to person by person, okay? Randomly throughout the sales team, they'll just get passed off to this salesman, this salesman, this salesman, this salesman. Okay? But what a lot of people don't realize is each of these salesmen are worse and better. Some are worse, some are better, some are really good, some are really bad. Hopefully not really bad, but you get what I'm trying to say, okay? What you have to do is these best leads should always be going to the best salesman, okay? And the round robin system of evenly distributing the leads is literally just what you're pretty much doing is these leads that are really good are going now to people who maybe don't have the best level of sales or are still in a learning phase, which is totally fine. But now you're missing out on all this value that you could have gotten by just simply handing that simple lead off to a really good salesman, okay? So the people and the leads who have the best percentage of closing them, meaning that they, for example, they have the most money that they're able to invest, or they work a better job, or this guy's a garbage man and this guy works at a bank, as a high-level executive. Which lead is going to be more financially qualified? Let's hand that lead off to someone who can have a higher percentage of closing and capturing that high level of value. Okay, so don't do this round robin system and feed these people off. Okay, and what happens a lot of the time is these lower quality leads, or even some higher quality leads, okay, they will not show. Okay, and this is very normal, right? They will not show up to meetings. They will no show. Okay, and what these people need to be doing is simply, when these leads come in, or even if this low quality lead doesn't show up, now you are just training the lower level people to now go into the database, or go into the appointment setting software, or go into the list of leads who didn't show up in the past. And now you're helping them work on their skills more to have a higher chance of showing up as well. Okay, so the best salesmen are probably the salesmen who have put the most work in, who have done the most reps, okay? And they don't need as much training as the people who are starting out and who aren't probably the best. So give the worst leads to those people. If they don't show, allow those people to then go back, try to rebook a bunch of people, go book fresh meetings, go just try to do more reps. That's gonna help them refine, and it's gonna make the entire system pretty much better in general, okay? And now we're gonna be talking about show rates, okay? On the topic of show rates. So a lot of you guys have really bad show rates, okay? Your show rates are trash. You're maybe operating at like I even myself, at one point in my business, I was doing like a 10% show rate. It was horrible. It was not good. And you have to, there's a lot of things you got to keep in mind in terms of show rate and how to maximize show rate, okay? So the first thing that I want to kind of like just give you an overall point of view when it comes to show rates is your entire process is kind of like a system. And what I mean by this is you have show rate. So someone shows up to a meeting, okay? Someone takes the call, and then someone collects the cash, okay? So if there's a kink in any one of these processes, then it will affect the next step. What I mean by this is, let's say your show rate is 50%, okay? And your closing rate is 50% as well, okay? So let's say we input 10 people to be booked in, 5 show, and out of 5, 2.5 will close. So most people will just say, oh, we just have to simply get better at closing. We just got to, these 5 people who show up, we just have to get this 50% up, or this whatever closing percentage up, and try to increase this, this closing rate pretty much. But you can achieve the exact same amount of growth or percentages at bat, or just closing, getting to the cash by just increasing your show rate. Okay, so would you rather increase your show rate by another 20% or your closing rate by 20%? Okay, which one would you rather? And the thing is, when you're increasing your show rate by another 20%, what is that doing to the skill of yourself or the skill of your team? They're taking more calls. You have more data to work with. Okay, so these same things, most people would say, oh, I'd rather increase my closing rate. I'd be a better closer. I'd rather just do that. When in fact, if you just increase your show rate, you pretty much are kind of achieving the exact same thing. You're just taking more. I would say it's slightly even better, but at the end of the day, you're achieving like the exact same sort of outcome. Okay? So this is a really big thing with show rates, because you have to keep this in mind. Okay? The next thing is give incentives to closers with better show rates. Okay? So what I mean by this is some closers have really good show rates, some closers don't have really good show rates. So what happens if for example, you have a closer A and you have a closer B. This guy has a 50% show rate. This guy has a 20% show rate. You want to incentivize this guy to keep pretty much like having a good show rate, incentivize him, because whatever he's doing is, let's say he has the highest show rate on the team. Whatever he's doing, you want to incentivize this and make it public. Okay? You want to pretty much express this to the team, and let's say if it's in the term of a bonus, if it's in the form of something, to then pretty much like show this guy publicly in front of your team, make it public in front of your sales team, that this guy has the best show rate. He's doing this. We're going to give him a bonus. We're going to give him this or whatever. We're going to publicly congratulate him. We're going to put him on our story. We're going to give him social, whatever we're going to do. We're going to give this guy a form of validation in one way or another. Okay? And what you're doing by this, when other salespeople are seeing this, is they are now going to, obviously, exact same thing, work harder and do the actions that this guy is probably doing to get that show rate up. And the thing is, it's not that much effort. Okay? It's not really that much effort. Like in order to get a good show rate, it doesn't take like a crazy amount of effort. Okay? You need to do some text messages. You got to do some, maybe some follow-ups in terms of like texting them before the meeting, maybe, a voice recording. We're going to be going through that a little bit later. But this guy who has a lower show rate, I can almost guarantee you that every single time he's probably not doing the exact same laborious activities, the boring, oh, hey, your meeting's in an hour, I'm looking forward to the call, that this guy is doing, okay? And that's a very easy fix. It's not like you're increasing your closing rate by 20%, which is like a big jump. That's a lot of work to do. That's a lot of skills you got to learn. This is simply just like manual labor. It's not that hard, okay? So incentivize that, get that into all of your sales guys' heads, make it public, because then they're going to start doing those exact same actions. We're going to be talking about how to actually increase your show rates across your business, okay? How does this work? How do you do this? What is kind of the overall process? So the thing is, we've found obviously automated reminders are very good, okay? Don't make your automated reminders. So don't make your automated reminders trying to be something that don't make your automated reminders sound like it's a person. So make it sound automated. So hey, this is an automatic reminder that your meeting is coming up in 2 hours, okay? You can set this up in whatever software system you're using. If it's Calendly or whatever sort of system you're using, you can throw those automated reminders in. You can put 3-4 automated reminders in. Past that, there's no point. But the biggest thing is, don't pretend to be a person. Don't pretend, okay? Make it sound, because a lot of people, they'll see, oh, hey, and then they'll respond to the automated reminder, and then they won't get a response back. And then if someone else is texting them, then they're kind of like, what the hell is going on? Okay? So make it sound automated, okay? The next thing is, what we found is obviously manual on top of the automated increases show rates by a lot as well. So what sort of manual text should you be sending out? So the first sort of manual text is a 24-hour text, okay? Then an AM text, and then a 1-hour text, okay? The 24-hour text should be a simple, hey, we prepped some material for our call. We're looking forward to it. We got some value coming up. We're looking forward to show you our process that we prepared, process, blah, blah, blah. All you're trying to do in this 24-hour reminder is get them back into the headspace that of what they were thinking when they booked that initial call, okay? Tell them that you have prepared some material or some information that is individual to their scenario, okay? That's gonna make them feel like, oh, this is something that is unique to the situation. This is something that is, oh my God, I am individually getting this piece of information that is to me. Therefore, I'm probably going to show up to that meeting. Therefore, I'm going to value this a little bit more. They have, instead, like in two case scenarios, let's say one guy is saying, hey, on the 24-hour mark, hey, your call's coming up, I'm looking forward to it, blah, 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 blah. This guy right here. And then another guy is saying, hey, I've prepped some very individualistic material that's going to help you see the difference between, or show you how, we've been able to get clients to go from, this weight to lose 30 pounds and be, in incredible shape. Okay. It's going to allow them to feel a little bit of guilt if they don't show up. Okay. So that's the first reminder. The next one is going to be an AM reminder. This is just going to be a simple reminder. Hey, looking forward to our call later this afternoon. Okay. And then the 1 hour mark, let's say, they're 1 hour out of coming to that call. I love sending a voice recording or a video. Okay. And all this is going to do, if people logically know that meeting is coming up, okay, they logically know, okay, I got all the automated reminders. This guy's texted me twice. The only reason at this point in the call, or this point in the whatever, the workflow, that I wouldn't show up is simply due to me not valuing this or feeling a little bit uncomfortable. Okay? And the way you do that is you're gonna wanna double down on that first hour. Okay? And you're gonna do this through a voice recording or a video that's gonna push a ton of comfort. You're gonna take your phone out and just say, hey John, this is Ash and I'm really looking forward to our call and to show you how to go from this to this. We're gonna be taking it away. I'm gonna be sharing my screen, showing you a bunch of very cool individual strategies that are gonna be unique to you. Looking forward to our call. Let me know if you have any questions before. I'll see you at 4:30 p.m. Thanks. That's it, okay? It allows people to feel a little bit of comfort, get familiar with you because they're gonna be talking with you, and it's just gonna make your process easier once they show because they already have seen your face before. They know who you are. Oh my God, this guy's reached out to me, instead of just like jumping on a call with a random sales guy or a guy they've never seen before and they're taking it completely cold from the start of that call. You're setting yourself up for more resistance that doesn't have to be there, okay? Sure, you can still sell like that. I know tons of people who sell like that. I've sold like that before, but is it making our lives easier? Is it adding leverage? This is all about sales leverage. This is all about shit we can do without even learning sales on a higher level, okay? And then the next thing, okay, to increase show rates is simply booking times, okay? If you book someone out 1 week, okay, the odds of them showing up to that call go down by 50%. Okay, they decrease by well into 50%. It's like 50, the stat is like 57%. Okay? If you book someone out by 1 day, their show rates don't decrease. Don't decrease. Because that pain is still with them, or that aspiration is still with them. They haven't forgot about that pain or whatever, okay? It's almost like on a graph, okay? If this is like, for example, show rate, it kind of works like this, okay? So there's a point where it stays at the exact same position and then it exponentially decreases after more and more time. So you want to try to get people booked in as soon as you can. I like to do same day or next day bookings only. And this is just a rule that you have to follow. You have to note, without a doubt, you have to book people 1 to 2 days out maximum. Past that, if people are like, oh, I can get in later this week. I really want. That is up to you to decide when, or the appointments that are to decide when that person is having that conversation or etc. to judge their level of certainty. Okay, you can do that, but that's up to the salesperson or the appointment setter to make that decision and be like, okay, is this person just saying, oh, we'll do next week because next week I'm not super interested, or are they actually really wanting this information, really wanting help, and they actually can't logistically do this week? In that case scenario, that's fine to book them out a little bit. But for 99% of people, 1 to 2 days maximum is what you have to stick with. Okay? Next, in terms of show rates, is obviously the emotional aspect that person is having on the call. What do I mean by this? So we're going to be talking about appointment setting a little bit later, but this is a big thing. So I've already talked about a little bit about value and comfort. Okay? But if you are not, or if the appointment setter is not having a decent conversation with that person on the call, and that call is, let's say, 2 minutes, it's really rushed, it's like you're pushing for the calendar, you're just saying, hey, you reached out, do you want to book in, blah, 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 and it's super quick and rushed, the show rate goes down by a lot. So especially for appointment setters, we're going to be talking about how to appointment set a little bit later, kind of what that process looks like, but people are most likely going to show up to meetings where they actually feel understood, where they actually had a good conversation with the sales rep, where they actually, found some value, found some comfort with the salesperson. They felt understood. They didn't feel like another person kind of going through, the pipeline. In that case, they're most likely going to show. So it's good to have sort of, take your time on those appointment setting calls. If you're doing them yourself, or if, a setter is doing that for your actual company, it's good to take your time. And, It's good to take your time, and it's good to ensure that you're having that connection. And on that actual call, one other thing you could do is include a downside of not showing to the meeting, okay? And you can even include this on your individual calendar. So in your actual calendar booking page, if there is a kind of like a warning or an acknowledgement before they book, okay? Like, when you go and you buy something, there's like your terms and agreements, okay? You can kind of do that as well for your calendar, where it says, if you don't show to this meeting, then X will happen. And what I like to do is I like to say, you can even go look at some of my other, I can link some client calendars as well, but usually what we do is we say, if you don't show to this meeting, your name will be removed from our database and prevented from future opt-ins in the future. What that does is they're now thinking, oh, okay, now I have one opportunity to kind of move forward with you and come to this call. So if there's no downside to them coming to the call, and it's just like, oh, I can book again if I want to. If I don't want to show up to this meeting, I can book in the future or whatever. Then there's not really going to be like okay? But if I said, hey, you have a meeting with someone important, Donald Trump, next week, and that meeting is super important and you're not really going to have another chance to speak with him, then you're going to be like, okay, yeah, this is a high status person. I only have one opportunity. Of course, I'm going to show up to that call. So there always it's good to include a downside. So you can list it on the calendar, and then you can get your appointment setters to actually do that in the call, or in, obviously the text, or however, that appointment setter is doing that. You're going to want to make sure that they emphasize a small downside. It's good to not, harp on it too much, but it's good to just acknowledge it and have that in the picture. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to be talking about is financing. So when it comes to financing, it's very powerful. So what I mean by financing is, let's say your program is $5,000 for someone to join your actual process. Most people, okay, if you're selling your process, most people won't be able to just drop $5,000 even if they actually wanted to. And this is a kind of a harsh reality. A lot of people will be able to, a lot of people won't, okay? And you're missing out on the people who can't actually can't because they don't have the money or they don't have the credit or whatever by not allowing a level of financing. Okay? So there's a lot of companies that you can use, like, Affirm, Klarna, okay, Sezzle. There's a new one called Splitit. Okay? There's so many of these, and it really depends on what payment processor that you use. If you use Stripe, if you use whatever sort of payment processor that you use, you're gonna wanna try to set up a level of financing so that people, if they really wanna join your process, they can get 5,000 USD split over 12 months, okay? For like a low interest rate, like a 1.8 interest rate. Or they can even set it up for 24 months or whatever, 16 months. And that allows them to pretty much pay these monthly installments. But then we, as the actual business owners, get the payout of 5K instantly. Okay? With no risk, because these third-party financiers are taking the risk for us. So I set all of my guys, all of my partners up with a level of financing, and even the biggest guys in the space who are selling high ticket. Yes, it's high ticket, but the actual payment of it isn't high ticket because they're only, like, most customers are only paying to Affirm or Klarna or whatever these monthly installments. And then we're getting the high ticket payment as well. So it's kind of a cheat code if you want to think about it like that, in terms of getting the money up front, but then them not getting the money up front. So then it allows us to just have so much more leverage when we're dealing with people, because let's say only 30% of people can pay the 5K up front who we talk to. We're missing out on 70% of people who can just say, okay, I'll pay the $300 monthly, and now we still get the 5K payout. So set up financing, it's very important. And then the last thing that I'm going to be talking about within this individual section is all about volume, okay? So I know I've talked about being precise, being a sniper, not taking the shotgun approach, but volume still matters a lot, especially when it comes to just closing statistics. So I'm gonna draw you an illustration here. Let's say you have a 100% closing rate, okay, but you're getting one call per day. 100% closing rate, so I'm gonna put CR, okay? And that is, let's say, 7 closes per week, okay? Which is equating to 7K per week that you're making. Let's say each of these is, your process that you're selling is $1,000, okay? Now, let's say you are operating at a 50% closing rate, but now you are taking 3 calls per day, okay? You can now, at the same price point, you can now see, pretty straightforward, okay, we're getting 3 calls a day. 3 times 7 is 21, okay? We're getting 10.5, let's just put it as 11 closes per week, okay, at 11K total with half of the closing rate, okay? And now let's say our closing rate is 20%, okay? But we're getting 10 calls a day. Okay? That's leading to 14 closes per week at 14K. So everything is kind of like a supply chain at the end of the day, okay? If your closing rate is really bad, that's something obviously you're going to want to get up. But if you are doing enough volume and if you are having enough calls per day, then you should be and let's say you're maxed out in terms of calls, and that's a variable that is crossed off the list. Okay, I can't take more calls. Then obviously, yes, focus on closing rate. But if your closing rate is 50 or is 100%, you're taking 1 call a day, then you should just be focused on getting more calls. Okay? If your closing rate is 50% and you're getting 3 calls a day, you can be focusing on getting more calls per day and increasing your closing rate. But the entire reason why I'm showing you this illustration is a lot of people are just focused on, okay, how can I sell better? What are the tactics that I can use to sell better? When in fact, if you just did more work, or if you just fed more calls to your closers, or if your show rate was just a little bit higher, things outside of actually just like knowing what to say on the call, then the entire process becomes a lot easier. Everything, like, you're just, at the end of the day, collecting more cash. Okay, so volume plays a big role in this, and don't underestimate that, because at the end of the day, it's an entire process. If you have more appointments, okay, that's going to be a higher chance of you having more shows, people coming to your calls. And if you have more people showing to your call, that's going to be more closes statistically. Okay, that equals hashtag math. Okay, and even if you want to trace this back even more, okay, more leads being reached out to. Okay, more leads. Okay, and then before that, more impressions. Okay, more impressions, more money being spent on ads, more content you're pushing, better content. Okay, more DMs if you're doing an outreach, or messages sent. Okay, so everything can kind of be back traced as well. So with sales, there is a level of volume that you obviously are playing to, and you have to try to max out your volume. A lot of these really big companies, they're taking massive amounts of calls per day, and they're really playing the volume card, but it works for them. Okay, because they can, because they have a team. They're not taking the calls themselves. They have, massive teams. And I've set these up before. Like, for example, some of the companies will have like 5, 6, 7 closers, where it's like, okay, the offer owner is not wasting his time trying to close unqualified leads. Okay, so that's a really big one. Volume is extremely important. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to be talking about is sales training. Okay, so how do you train your team? What are the tactics that you use to train your team, etc.? So when you're actually doing sales training and you're going through the process, your goal, okay, is not to hire just the best salespeople. Okay? There are a lot of hungry people out there who, especially salespeople, who really are eager to get into the sales space, really eager to learn, absorb, and a lot of this information, like, I hate to say it, it's not incredibly difficult, okay? Sales is something that someone can learn within 1 to 3 months maximum, okay? And it's not like you're getting someone into like a software engineering job where it takes like 5 years for someone to learn like JavaScript, for example. But with sales, an average ordinary person can get on there, or someone with minute experience, and learn this and understand your offer, understand your process within a little bit of time. And when you're hiring just the best people, what's that going to cost you? What's that going to, for your own organization? That's going to lead to you obviously having to pay these people a premium. Okay, so a lot of the closers that I individually hire, or the setters I individually hire, are not people who are necessarily at the top. Okay, it's the people that I know can get to the top within a little bit of time. Okay, because once we implement it, once we bring someone through a sales training process for a couple of months, now they're going to be at the top. They're going to view you as someone who brought them to that position. They're going to be so loyal to your company, and they're going to pretty much just like really be involved in everything that they do because you brought them to that point. So it's very important that you can hire the top. There are upsides to that, but in my opinion, it's not always a benefit to individually hire the top. The next point about sales training is meetings daily. So with every kind of individual team that I place, I ensure that every single day there is a meeting, okay? A check-in call, a group call for that individual meeting, where there is a level of practicing, okay? Practicing the script, doing a role play, and getting feedback on that, okay? And role playing is extremely important, okay? Especially when you're the offer owner, or if you're the person kind of doing this entire process, you will have a level of like, oh, I don't want to role play because I don't want to mess up. I'm scared that someone's going to give me something and I'm going to stutter or whatever. You have to get over that, and you have to put ego aside. You have to, like, especially if you are doing these meetings, your priority in these meetings should be a level of role play. And during that role play, you have to get over ego and get over that fact, because if you can't get over that, then you're going to have a hard time, or your team's going to have a hard time learning, okay? And when you have ego aside, okay, you're going to tell your sales guys, hey, listen, we all mess up sometimes. The whole point of these calls is for us to have a collaborative, whatever, and go through things together, and for me to express, a new viewpoint, or for me to try something, or for me to show you a way that I do something, or etc. And we're just going to kind of do it all together. We're all a team here. Set that expectation and get over the ego, okay? During these role plays, you're going to want to try to have a live feedback mode, okay? You're going to try to, what I usually do is I get my closers to get a pen and paper out, not on notes or typing or whatever. Get a pen and paper out, okay? Do the training with them, and I will stop them during the session, okay? So let's say the role play is, for example, 20 minutes long. We're practicing an individual section or the entire script or whatever we're doing. I'm going to stop them whenever I see a mistake, okay? And I'm going to tell them this before. I'm going to say, hey, listen, I'm going to stop you a bunch during this, and I'm going to give you the feedback. I want you to write it down, and then we're going to keep going, okay? And I may stop them a bunch. I may only stop them twice. I may only stop them 3 times. You're going to give them this feedback live, okay? You're going to tell them exactly what they did wrong, and then you can even express it to them again. And you should only move to the next step once they clearly understand it, or they actually do it correctly. So to give you an example, one of the sales teams that I was managing, we were selling in the Indian market, and we were having a really hard time, the sales guys were having a hard time perfecting their tonality of a consequence question, okay? So there's a point in the script where you say, like, a consequence question is something like, well, what if you keep doing what you're doing, okay? And they were having a really hard time perfecting that, because the whole point of that question is to invoke a lot of pain and to get them to be like, oh my God, my current situation is so bad, I can't keep doing this, I need to change. That's a consequence. Like, what if you keep doing what you're doing? What if you keep being fat? What if you always make the same amount of money that you're making? Okay? What would that be like? Would that be hell on earth, or would you be okay with it? Okay? And we were having a really hard time doing this. So what I did with them is, when we got to the point where we were doing the consequence question, okay, they would mess it up. I would say, hey, say it more like this. Okay, maybe he'd mess it up again. Okay, let's do it again. Let's do it again. Let's do it again. And we would only move on until he had it 100% pat down and everyone understood exactly how to say it. Because you have to get that through and allow them to say it and allow them to feel the point of getting over it themselves. Okay, so it's important, do the live feedback with them, get them to kind of do it all together, or your team to see that all together, and get over that together, and show them obviously the truth in that, okay? And when it comes to actually doing this and managing everything, what you'll realize is the best closers, okay? A lot of companies will make their best closers their sales managers, okay? This is not necessarily a good thing, okay? What you have to realize is that the skills it takes to be a sales manager are not necessarily the best skills from being a good closer, okay? And this is something that I learned kind of the hard way, because we think, okay, yeah, if he's a really good closer, then obviously he has the skills, okay, to close someone, of course. But does he have the skills to express, okay, and teach this to people, because I know a lot of closers who have a lot of skills, who know how to close, who put them on a call, it's lights out, but do they know how to tell that to the team? Do they know how to teach it correctly? Because there's a lot of sales managers who may not be at the same level as some of the really good closers, but they know how to teach it better. They know how to express it better, and therefore I would rather have them in a sales manager role, okay, rather than just the best closer. So these skills, the leadership and the teaching skills and the skills it takes to close, they're different skills, okay? And you have to understand that and not just say, okay, you're the best closer, I'm gonna put you on sales manager, etc. And even you still, like even these really good closers who say, okay, yeah, I'm gonna upgrade you to sales manager or whatever, now you're missing out on them potentially taking more meetings. Now you're missing out on that financial aspect as well. So I would urge you to actually not put your best closer, put the person who you think could teach the best, express things the best, vocalize it to the entire team, because that's going to make the entire team better. And you're going to set that expectation. You're going to say, hey, you're the sales manager, but it's fine. Like, go on the call and just be like, hey, I know some of you may have more expertise in terms of like individual, nuances of the sales calls, but it's okay. We're a team. I'm going to be showing you the methods that I've been able to follow, that have got me to this point. And even if you look at some of the best coaches in the world, like Michael Jordan's coach wasn't better than him at basketball. Okay. But why would Michael Jordan listen to him? Why would Michael Jordan value his expertise? Okay. A lot of these coaches weren't great all-star players, okay? But yet, they were really good players, okay, who understood how to teach, got into coaching, and these players who were great players still value their expertise, still value the angle that they're seeing everything, okay? And what else you can do for sales training that's very good, okay, is game review, okay? So in almost any sport you play, so I'm just going to take football, for example, because I played football. Same thing happens with basketball, like literally any sport you play. There will be a film class. Okay, if you play it at a high level, you will have, a couple times a week where you'll be sitting in a film room with your entire team, and you'll be watching over the game and critiquing yourself from like a bird's eye or a third party kind of point of view. Okay, and these are extremely important. Okay, you want to try to do these game reviews, and even urge your team to do them on themselves. You can do them as a team, but game reviews and watching over your calls are very important, because all sales is, or all like how you learn something outside of sales, is you input something into a system. So you try something, you get an output or a result, and then that leads to a level of feedback that then can change your input for the better, okay? If this output is bad, what are you going to do? You are going to learn from that mistake, and you are going to get feedback, and you're going to hopefully change your new input the next time you go and try to do a new sales call, okay? Let's say your output is really good and you close someone. Okay, well, what did I do that was good? What feedback can I derive from this to then take that into my next call, okay? And the thing is, a lot of people, they will only watch bad calls. And when you only watch bad calls, you don't know what you did necessarily. Like, you're only gaining the inputs from the bad things, okay? And that is not a good thing, because you're not absorbing new inputs. But when you watch a contrast between the good calls and the bad calls, you are now getting new inputs of what you did correctly that you can cross-reference with the bad things, and now the entire system gets more feedback, and now you can bring that into your next call. So it's very important. You will never learn. I urge this to almost everyone I work with, and even if you're doing this by yourself, even if you are selling by yourself, or even if you have a massive team, whatever it is, you have to make sure that you're watching your calls over again. You won't get good at sales if you aren't getting feedback on anything, okay? If there is no feedback, feedback is another word for learning or understanding, okay, what you did right or what you did wrong. And if there is no feedback, the same thing is going to happen again and again, okay? If nothing changes, nothing changes, okay? Cool. And then on top of sales training, what is a very powerful thing as well is showing closers the back end. Okay? So this process is pretty important because a lot of people, a lot of teams as well, they will just show their closers, what they need to do in order to collect the card. They'll put their card into the system, run the card, and then that's all the closer knows, and etc. Obviously, they know how to explain the system, but they don't know the back end and etc. Because we're pretty much bringing someone from, a closer handling them to a CSM, customer success manager, okay? And then from the closer, there's the appointment setter, setting to the closer, okay? And the more this guy knows about this step, the more conviction he will have to move this guy to the next step, okay? So it's very important for the closer, for the appointment setter to know the next step, or know that, for the appointment setter to even know what happens in the customer success manager level in terms of onboarding someone, okay? How does that onboarding process look? Because that's just gonna get the closer more information, more conviction in the overall process that he's passing someone down to. So then, that process will make it easier when people are going to the next step, because then they're like, oh yeah, no, this is exactly how the closer explained it. I know exactly what's happening, blah, 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 blah. And same with the CSM, same with the customer success team. They should know, how that process looks like for the closer. So then they now have a better expectation to when that closer finishes the call, who they're dealing with. So this is kind of a two-way street, and you should try your best for there to be transparency across these stages so that everyone kind of knows the entirety of the process holistically. It's almost like doing a diet and or trying to lose weight, and you only know about supplements, okay? If you only know about supplements, now you're looking at it from a micro point of view and not a macro point of view. Okay, I need supplements, I need my diet, I need working out, and I should get some sunlight, hydration. There's a lot of moving parts. Look at it holistically so that the entire system can get better. And as well, even for closers, in order to kind of get them more, up to speed in terms of training, etc., get your closers to read testimonials. This is especially if closers are, maybe in a downswing or in a slump or etc. Get them to read testimonials, because closers, when they read a testimonial and have conviction in the process and say, oh my God, this guy went from this to this, then now they're able to obviously now have more conviction, okay, in the process. And the more conviction you have when you're selling something, the more you actually know that this thing can help someone, the less bad, okay, someone will feel about actually selling them. Okay, because let's say someone gives you an objection or says, oh, I want to think about it, and now you feel a level of internal guilt for having to try to push them. Well, you probably just don't believe in your process well enough to bring them that actual result, okay? So if you can have 100% conviction and you know that process to 100% help someone, then there really shouldn't be a bottleneck there, okay? Only if you're selling, obviously like a half-assed or a pretty bad process, then yeah, probably you're gonna feel pretty bad about that entire process. And even on top of this, excuse me, what you can do is give kudos to the sales guys who close prospects who get great results. Okay? What this does is, let's say this guy came into the program, okay, and he was a tough close. Let's just say his name's John. John was a tough close. He was really hard for our closer to sell, and he was very difficult. We had to do a ton of objection handling, etc. Okay, but he came into the program, and he went from 250 pounds overweight to 220 pounds in 1 month. Okay? He lost a ton of weight, etc. Okay? And now the closer that sees that result, okay? The closer that sees that result is going to now have conviction in pushing people more, or in having to spend more time nurturing people on the calls, getting through concerns or explaining away concerns or etc. And with that validation you're giving them, with that little pat on the back or reward or verbal reward or validation, they're going to feel better about going and doing that more. And then when you spread that across the team, now, okay, everyone's kind of seeing this as well, and they're going to want that kudos as well. So it's very important, because a lot of the closing teams that I work with, they would close really good, okay, at the end of the month. Okay, so let's say this is like day 30 of the month. They would close really good at the end of the month because they would see a lot of these people who have come in, okay, initially. And at the end of the month, they would actually be able to see some level of results with them. Okay, they would maybe check in with them at the end of the month. They would see some sort of like submission to the database, like a monthly submission. And then that would boost their mood, boost their conviction, make them feel better about what they're doing, make them feel more conviction that they're actually helping people. And that would translate directly to them closing better, okay? So it's highly important for you to give kudos and for people and your sales guys to learn that this process is good and give kudos to that, okay? And the last thing that I want to share about sales training, okay, is learning from pain. Okay, and this is a big one, okay, because a lot of closers, a lot of people, they will watch, you know, like a video, okay. They will, you know, read over the script, okay. You know, they will, you know, even like the role plays, like we said, this stuff is all good. It will help them, okay. But if someone learns from pain, what happens subconsciously in our brain is we're trying to avoid pain and go more towards pleasure. So subconsciously in our brain, what happens is if we experience something, or we're on a sales call with someone and that person says, you know, F off, you're horrible, and screws them off, okay? That salesperson is going to say, oh my God, I did something horrible. What happened? They're going to feel a level of pain from that, and they're going to know not to do that again because of that pain, okay? And obviously this is a harsh example, okay? But even like, you know, if you don't close someone, okay, that hurts. If someone's like ready to spend 5K and you keep blabbing and they're now wanting to think about it, you demoted them in terms of wanting to actually move forward, they're going to feel pain from that. Okay, so with sales, you can do a lot of training, you can do a lot of stuff, but getting out there and actually doing the painful stuff in terms of going for the pitch, getting rejected, doing all of that stuff, feeling the pain, that's going to translate into people learning the quickest. Okay, if you ride your bicycle and you keep falling off your bicycle and scraping your knee, ow, that hurts so much, then you're going to learn how to ride your bicycle quicker if you're falling off and it's not hurting, okay? So learning from pain is the way that I did it, because I actually started off with cold calls. I was cold calling people, and I would get so many people telling me to F off. Oh, you just sound like another, you know, random Indian guy calling me from, you know, southern India, or or I'm not interested, leave me alone, or all this sort of stuff. I even had people who, like, this happened several times before, where I would have people who'd be like, okay, Ashton, yep, let's move forward with, you know, $5,000. Send me the link. I'll process that payment later today. And I'm like, okay, cool, bye, hang up the call, okay? Well, what happened from that? They would never pay. Oh, you know, oh, sorry, today was busy. I'll pay it tomorrow. Tomorrow turned into next week. Next week turned into never. That's just one example of me. Literally, I remember being broke, waiting for like this is when I was actually still in university, sitting in my math lecture and feeling like, oh my God, this guy said he would pay later tonight. And he said this, multiple times. He pushed it off from here to today, from before to then, blah, 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 blah. He said he would pay and now he's not paying. And, oh, I hope he pays tonight. That was a ton of pain for me. That was horrible because I had that expectation and it didn't go through. So now I'm knowing for the next call, okay, if the guy says yes on that call, then we're going to get that processed on that call. Okay, that's just one example, but that's something that you have to go through yourself to feel that level of pain. Okay, and that's the end of the sales training section. The next section that we're going to be talking about is going to be all about sales hiring, how to hire people for your actual individual sales team. So what you have to realize is a lot of this stuff, if you're an entrepreneur, okay, entrepreneurship is, I spelt it wrong. It's more of like, it's the entrepreneur, I believe. Entrepreneurship is all about finding the most leveraged way to tackle something, okay? And this is the first point that I want to talk about when hiring. So there's a lot of really good entrepreneurs out there. And for example, there's this really good quote of this one entrepreneur. I forget his name. This was a while ago I heard this. But he said, why learn something when you can just get someone to do it for you? It's like this, the C student mentality. The C student is the guy who doesn't have, much skill, but he knows how to get people to do the things for him. And one of my really good friends, actually, he didn't learn sales at all. He learned the basics, but he didn't learn sales at all. And he went and found people who did know sales, who understood the process and got him to kind of this person to manage everything for them. So the question that I ask you is, why do something if you can get someone to do it better without having to actually do the process yourself? Okay, so this is something to keep in mind, okay? Especially later on, this is gonna come more into play, especially when you're, doing your business, but you're going to want to hire a team to do closing for you. So when to hire the team is very essential because a lot of people, they will hire people too quickly, but you want to try to eventually get to the point where you have more reps working for you, because the more reps you have working for you allows your, ceiling of how many calls you can take to just go up. And the more calls you can take, the more closes you can potentially have, okay? So you want to eventually obviously hire a team. If you're, let's say, doing, 10K per month, you're not ready, 20K a month, not ready, 30K a month, you can start to think about it. Around $50,000 a month is when you should start to actually outsource this for other people, okay? For example, like this guy that I shared with you right here who did it exactly from the jump, there are still downsides with it. You can still outsource and get people to do it for you, but the only downside from this is if you have somebody who is, let's say, a closer, okay, and he wants a role, and let's say his name's John again, and he wants a role, and he has two options going with this company, okay, that's doing $1 million a year, or this company that hasn't made any money, okay, he's probably gonna go with this company because they have more infrastructure, because there are already sales reps in that company doing a lot of money who he can go and directly learn from, okay? So a lot of people, they'll go and they're saying, oh, I'm making 10K a month, we're just gonna hire a closer for our company. It's not really that advantageous, okay? You can hire appointment setters, you can, get appointment setters completely from the jump. You can do that, but especially closers, a lot of them are a little bit more snobby. A lot of them are like, oh, I want to live this laptop lifestyle, etc. And that's normal, that's fine, but you're gonna have a really hard time finding like closers with actually a good mentality, if you're making less than, $50,000 a month, okay? Because closers they want transparency. They want to know how much money you're making to see if it's actually worth to actually work with you. So from the start, okay, you can hire appointment setters, okay? But from the start, you cannot hire closers. Okay. I say $50,000 a month. You can start to actually have a closer doing that for you. Okay. And just to show you the math of actually why you necessarily don't need a closer, especially from the jump. Let's say your process is $5,000. Okay. Then in order to make $50,000 a month, okay, that's 10 closes. That's one close every 3 days, monthly. Okay. 3 days. Okay. That's not a lot of volume. Okay. You can do that yourself. You can take, you can take three, that's not 13, that's 3. You can make 3 to 5 calls daily and make 50K a month. It's not a massive amount of, like volume for you to do. It's not massively time consuming. So you can do that yourself. It's not a lot of volume, and you can, especially if you're selling high ticket, to do that yourself. Low ticket is a completely different kind of scenario, but you can do that volume yourself. And a lot of these closers, okay, when they're coming in and they're, we'll just use the John analogy again. When John is coming in and, John is, let's say, like I said before, he's starting more from scratch. He has a good mentality. He wants to learn, etc. Then you're not going to be able to give him the inputs that he needs if you don't know anything about closing, or even have anyone else on your team who knows anything about closing. If you have someone else on your team who knows stuff about closing, that's a totally different scenario. But he's going to want to learn, okay? You're going to want him to learn so he can make you more money. So it's good to start from a level where obviously you have cash flow, you have validation, so then you can portray that to the people that you do hire in the future, okay? So that is all about closing, that's all about, when to specifically hire. In terms of how to hire, okay, it is the best place where you can go and find people to actually work with you, salespeople, is sales organizations and social medias. Okay? So I'm going to explain to you both of these medians and why they're really good. So for sales organizations, okay, a lot of companies, what they'll do is they have a front end where they'll teach you how to be an appointment setter or teach you how to be a high ticket closer. And they will have, let's say, a community of 5,000 people who don't have placement, who really want to get on a roll. And you should go and, build a connection within, a manager here or the owner here so that, you can have these access to these people that are constantly being coming in because they're running marketing. These sales organizations, they're running ads for their front end offer to teach people. They know, how to get people. They're constantly doing that themselves. So you should go in, make the connection. And a lot of people, like you think, oh, I have to pay for the closer, I have to pay. You actually don't, okay? If you build I build tons of connections in a lot of like really good organizations that do for appointment setting, for closers. And I know a couple people in the organizations and I pretty much go to them and say, hey, listen, I need a closer or I need a setter. And they just give me a list of some people who best fit my description or best fit my qualifications. So that's the first way you can do it in terms of how to actually hire people. The second way you should do it, if you don't want to do it that way, is through social media, okay? The only way this works is if you already have a good presence, okay, online, okay? If you have no presence online, meaning you have no following or you have no posts or no one knows who you are online, just don't do this. Just go to the sales organization, try to make some sort of connections. But if you have social media and you have a following, just make a post, do a story post, make a feed post, do a Twitter post, do a whatever, and say, hey, I'm hiring closers or I'm hiring people for this job description. This is the, earning potential. You can make this much money. Okay, these are the qualifications in order to work with me. You need to do this, you need to have this expertise, etc. And go make that post and there's gonna be a ton of people who respond. Okay, a really good one for this, just a heads up, that I've always used is Twitter. Okay, Twitter is exceptional. And I know it's called X right now, but Twitter is really, really good for this because I only have I haven't used Twitter in a while, but I use it every once in a while, especially if I need someone. Twitter has a lot of closers and online money people okay? And these online money people are like all over Twitter, okay? And you can go on Twitter, make a couple connections, have some friends with some people on there and just say, hey, I'm gonna make a post. Can you repost it on your, on your Twitter or whatever? And you can get a ton of people who reach out to you there. And you don't have to do like an entire Google form where people go and apply and do the whole fill out this application. Just have a DM with someone, push them to a call, get them on a call, see if you have a connection with them, see if you actually like the person. You don't have to make it too complicated. Do a couple interviews, see where that takes you, ask some good questions, and feel out their personality, their skill set, etc. But push people to a call. I would recommend before making a decision that you do around 20 different interviews if you're hiring for let's say you're hiring one closer, do 20 interviews minimum. So then you have a good kind of broad sort of thing, broad sort of amount of information so that you can make that decision rather than just doing one or two because it's hard for you to see. Okay. And then that is pretty much, how to actually hire people. In terms of actually who to hire, I know we talked about this already, but you don't have to hire the top of the mountain. You don't have to hire people who are, the number one best people out there because it's going to be really hard. These people are, already trying to work for the best of the best of the best. You can go for the people who are in the middle to the lower, who have that potential, who understand things. And a really good tip that I learned about hiring, I actually learned from Sam Ovens, okay? Sam Ovens, he taught me about hiring. He said that when he was hiring a media buyer, okay? A media buyer is someone who runs ads, okay? He said instead of trying to go and find, the best current media buyer out there who, was the best in the space, who already has been spending a ton of money on ads, who knows everything about ads, let me just go find someone in a parallel plane, okay? What he means by this is instead of going and finding a media buyer who runs ads, what is a skill within media buying that is similar, okay, to another industry? So he said, okay, statistics, okay, because ads are all about statistics, okay? Can I go and find a statistician, okay, or a software engineer or a mathematician, okay? Can I go find someone within these parallel planes who have this skill of statistics that makes, these top people really good? And can I go and find these people for dollars or pennies on the dollar and train them up, okay? Therefore, you're getting labor for cheaper, okay? You are delivering that trend, you're helping these people as well. And they're obviously going to be more loyal if you're helping them make more money and you're bringing them to a point where, you're actually helping them. So that's a really good tip that I learned about hiring. And the same thing with sales. Go find people who, are good at, in a parallel plane, or they're ambitious, or there's a lot of other characteristics that you can look for that aren't necessarily just I know how to follow this crazy sales script, or I know how to do, looping or all this sort of stuff. So that's all about hiring and kind of the overview of hiring. In terms of hiring, you need to hire, like I said, $50K a month is the point where you should be looking at hiring. Less than that is pointless. So that's all about hiring. Those are my tips on hiring in terms of sales. The next thing that we're going to be talking about is what the sale actually looks like, how to actually sell if you're a coach online, and what that actual individual process looks like right here. All right. So when it comes to actually selling and actually, okay, now you understand, the preconditions, you know how to hire, you understand, training your team, how to get leverage, all that sort of fun stuff. We're now going to be talking about actually closing people, okay? Some kind of fun stuff. So let's jump into it. So everything that you probably know about sales is probably wrong, okay? And I'm going to tell you why right here. So when I was pretty much first starting in sales, okay, I was, in college, sitting at my college dorm, trying to grind away at my desk, making cold calls, doing all that sort of stuff. And, what I would usually do is, I would try to get people onto a meeting, get a meeting or two or whatever, and from cold calls or whatever I was doing. And I would use popular sort of sales tactics, okay, to try to hard close people. Okay? And what happened was these people, they felt a level of uncomfort because of, this hard close sort of stuff. And I would get a lot of people who were ghosting me or whatever, and I was constantly in like a follow up mode. I was constantly having to follow up with people. Let me continually follow up with you, blah, blah, blah. And I would have tons of no-shows. Okay? Lots of no-shows. Okay? And there's this one instance, okay, where, I'd booked this meeting. The guy joined the meeting. And what I was taught, okay, was you have to get to the pitch as soon as possible. Get to the pitch and pitch people as soon as you can, because that's what I learned in the courses that I bought and the stuff online. And then once you make the pitch, you should go and handle the objections and try to deal with their bull crap or whatever, to the close. And I actually learned this from, a really popular sales trainer named Jordan Belfort. Okay, I'm sure you guys have heard of his movie, The Wolf of Wall Street. But Jordan Belfort, he pretty much taught this method called the straight line selling, straight line persuasion, where you would, you'd start with the pitch, you'd have an objection, they'd have an objection, you'd bring them back to the center. Let's say this is the close, and then they'd have another objection, you bring them back, they'd have another one, but like, it's just like kind of just basic, like just looping. He called it looping, okay? And what I heard from this, okay, what I got from this is a lot of people saying, oh, you're a great salesman. Oh, you're a great salesman. You're so great, but you're a great salesman, blah, 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 blah. And that's not what they meant. What they meant is, I'm having a hard time telling you to F off because you're pretty much just looping. You're hard closing me, and I'm feeling the pressure from what you're saying. And I'm just going to say, oh, you're a great salesman, but I'm going to give you another objection. And then, oh, you can handle it again. Oh, whatever. Okay, so I kept getting objections. I kept persisting, and then until this guy, this specific example, he flipped out. He's like, oh, fuck off, dude. Like, leave me alone. And hung up on me, okay, because I was trying to do this, and I was really lost. I was invested into this method. I spent a lot of money to have this system. And it was good. It helped me a little bit, but it wasn't really getting me the results that I wanted. And I was a little bit pissed, okay? Until I read this book, okay, that I actually saw online, okay? And I'm going to tell you what this book kind of expressed to me. So this book is called To Sell is Human, okay? And this book changed my perspective on sales, okay? So I was recommended this book. I actually saw it on an Instagram kind of reel by this other sales trainer named Jeremy Miner, okay? His stuff is really good. But pretty much in this book, I actually I was still in college at the time. I went to the library, okay? And I took this book out on my girlfriend's credit card, or not my girlfriend's library card at the time. And then like a month or two later, I was so invested into my business and like working, we broke up. And then she was getting charges for the book. And she's like, hey, can you return the book? And I was just, no. So let's get back to it. So in this book, pretty much what it stated is quite a few things. So they pretty much did this kind of massive peer review on sales and like learning what the general consensus of what people think about sales. And what they found is most people, the way they view salesmen, okay, is they view salesmen with a couple keywords, okay? Icky, pushy, and annoying were the top 3 words that most people associate with salesmen, okay? Icky, pushy, and annoying, okay? And this is just kind of what the book was saying. And the way this developed was actually through the industries evolving and kind of changing the dynamic of sales. So in the first phase, okay, you're going to see why this makes sense in a second, but in the first phase, okay, where sales were developing, capitalism, the Industrial Revolution, okay, a little bit later after that, but in 1950s, okay, there was this company called the Fuller Brush Company, okay, and they had thousands of salesmen all around the world, and they were going door to door. And pretty much what they would do, okay, this Fuller Brush Company, is they would knock on your door and they would enter your home and not leave until you've bought something. They would just keep looping and keep, whatever. And this method, because it was so widespread all around America, it left a, really bad taste around salesmen, etc., and people being more pushy and people being more pushy, then tactics coming out to potentially even being more pushy or etc. And people just disassociated more, okay? And then phase 2, okay, we see this even coming around, like I want to say 1980s to 2000s, okay? We see a lot of sales trainers emerge, guys like, the same guy, Jordan Belfort, okay? We have a lot of these like older guys who sold back in the 80s or whatever, and a lot of these guys came around and were selling, again, high pressure stuff. Even there's this really big car salesman, and he set the record or whatever in the 1990s for selling cars, and then he made a book about how to sell anything to anyone. Okay, that was the name of his book. Okay, and a lot of these guys who were selling back then, these were old tactics. Okay, these old tactics, okay, worked based on the market not having been caught up at the time. And this thing that I learned probably would have worked back in the 1980s because, the market wasn't adjusted, the market didn't know, etc. Okay? So what I'm trying to explain here, the overall thesis of this is, if you're selling something, okay, if the prospect hasn't seen the sales thing before or hasn't felt the pressure before, then they're just gonna think it's normal and they're gonna whatever. Okay, like if an army hasn't seen an attack before, it's not gonna know how to defend against it. Okay, and a lot of these things, okay, you were able to do this high pressure stuff. You were able to do this high pressure sales stuff back in the 80s because, for example, nowadays, someone, if they want to buy a car, they're just going to go online, okay? They're going to read reviews, okay? They're going to go on Google. They're going to scour Trustpilot. They're going to go on Google reviews. They're going to see all this sort of stuff. And they're going to say, okay, I'm not going to go to this dealership, or I'm going to find the price here. They didn't have to go through a salesman because they don't have to go through a salesman because there's all online stuff right now, okay? So, so back then, if you had a pushy experience with a sales guy, what are you going to tell your friend? Your friend's going to tell this person, like, it's not as widespread, okay? So a lot of these old tactics of a lot of these sales trainers are, even like Grant Cardone, for example, like these guys are older. They were sold this like older sort of like sales methodology that worked back in the 80s, back in the 90s, back in the early 2000s. But remember, if an army hasn't seen an attack before, it's not going to know how to defend against it. It's a lot easier to sell to people who don't understand or haven't been through sales calls before because these tactics work a lot better. But being pushy and doing all this stuff is not really the way to do it anymore because people are smarter, consumers are smarter, they understand what high pressure sales is, they feel your level of, oh, I need you to buy this. Like they feel that internally and they're not going to do it. Okay. So, so a lot of these companies, a lot of these, things have been associated with obviously icky, pushy, and annoying for all these, the market consensus associating those words with those people. Okay. And what the new solution, so kind of, I want to label it as phase 3, is genuinely seeing if you can help in the first place. Okay? Can you actually help them in the first place? Can you genuinely help them? Okay? The next thing is never be a product, never be a solution pusher. Seek to understand before being understood. Seek to understand before being understood, okay? Because the more data you have, the more you know about someone, the better they'll feel understood, and the more trust they'll have towards you, and the better data you'll have to make that close because it can be more personalized, okay? Asking good questions, okay? So instead of pushing something, instead of saying, hey, Jordan Belfort, you've seen the boiler room movies of Jordan Belfort, hey, buy this, blah, this Fuller Brush company or whatever. Ask good questions that, obviously are eliciting a good emotional response about where they want to go to, okay? No false scarcity, okay? Most of the times it comes off horribly, okay? Like when you say, oh, like I want you to actually process this for a second. When you are on a call with someone, you say, oh yeah, this is your last moment to buy this before, our whatever is going to run out. The only thing that's gonna make them feel is a level of like, ugh. Okay, I just had a weed, lawn weed company called me this morning, not that weed, and they gave me a quote like a week ago, and they called me today and they say, hey, you got to buy today or else our promotion's gonna run out. Do you really think I believe that? Do you really think most people believe that? Okay, and like that's not really accomplishing anything. Like it's better to just say nothing than use false scarcity because it's leaving them with a bad taste in their mouth. I even said after that, I'm like, that left a bad taste in my mouth, okay? And the last point that I want to make is no hard closing, okay? If you feel a level of, I want to say like oddness, and if you feel like you're actually having to push someone incredibly hard, then I want you to ask yourself what the actual person on the other side of the screen feels as well. Okay, so you should not be having to do like exceptionally hard closing stuff. There is a level of pushing people, but it's not pushing people in the level of slamming and being hard and really pushing and pushing and pushing, because that's just going to get people to obviously blow up. Okay, so this is the new phase. Genuinely seeing if you can help people in the first place, understanding people, seeking to understand before being understood, asking good questions, not using false scarcity, and actually finding a pain, okay? Finding a level of pain, okay? Seeing what that current situation is like, okay? Their current painful situation, seeing their desired situation, okay? Seeing what that would be like, what's that like, okay? And what that gap is in between. What is that gap? Okay, is it a couple of things? What's stopping them from getting there? That is all sales. You're bringing someone from point A to point B. You are selling a transformation. You are selling a shift. Okay, and you're not going to sell that shift by slamming that down their throat. You're going to sell that shift by understanding where they are, seeing how painful that is, okay, seeing why it's so painful for them, okay, then understanding where they want to get to, why they want to get there, okay, what's stopping them from getting there on their own, okay, is this something that they actually truly want to do, that they have tons of conviction in, okay, these things are incredibly important, okay, so that's just kind of an overview of what sales is from the jump, okay, and what you're going to have to know, because most people have very warped perceptions on what they're actually selling. They think that they're going to, jump on a call with someone and just like push it down their throat, while, the market has been very skewed because of a lot of companies and bad people, or not even bad people, but, these words tell you themselves from what people mostly think about salespeople. So that's not your goal. Your goal is to actually see if you can help in the first place. Okay. So now we're going to be talking about, okay, now that you understand a little bit about the, conditions of selling, okay, and what that kind of looks like from a macro point of view. Now we're going to be talking about the pre-sale. Okay. Okay. So when we talk about the pre-sale, okay, what you have to realize is the sale doesn't start at the conversation. The sale doesn't start, when the appointment setter is calling them or the texts are being sent out. The sale starts at the first click, okay? The first point of interest, the first point of someone reaching out, okay? That is the exact first point where the sale actually starts, okay? So when I talk about reaching out to leads quickly or trying to get people who have reached out, at 4 p.m. and you're reaching out at 4:01, that is all about, reaching out to that level of interest initially because the sale starts right there. When someone clicks on something, now they're going to be taken down a rabbit hole. Now they're going and watching your next step in the funnel. Now they're going to go click on your page. Now they're going to go do a bunch of other stuff. And the sale is either convincing them that they should be working with you or not be working with you. Okay. So it's very important to understand that it starts at the first click. It's an entire process. Okay. And it's not just one moving part. Okay. The next part that I want to talk about is appointment setting. So this is a very important topic because if you're not able to set, appointments properly, then you're going to not be able to close properly. So these two kind of go hand in hand. So I'm going to be going through the overall script for appointment setting and kind of how to do that individual call or how to actually set that appointment. But the biggest things that you're going to want to understand is you are going to want to try to set the next step up for success. What I mean by this is if you are not able to, for example, close someone, then that is probably because you are either horrible at sales, which for this case scenario I'm not going to say, or the appointment setting conversation or the appointment setter didn't qualify them correctly or didn't have a correct conversation. Okay, so that appointment setter or that appointment being set should invoke a level of desire or curiosity for that next step. It should be something that they are wanting to go to, that they are interested in going to, okay? And what I get all of the appointment setters that work for my company to do for the actual closers is you want to kind of gas it up a bit. You want to hype it up. You want to get them interested and get it feeling like, oh my God, I really want to go to that call, okay? You're pretty much going to say something like, if, for the appointment setter, okay, yeah, let's get you booked in for whatever. You're going to be on the call with John or whatever. And, John has helped 100 people just like you go from X to Y. And he's going to be kind of making an individual plan and, et cetera. Or even if it's yourself, you're going to say, yeah, so on that call, if you're booking for yourself, yeah, on that call, I've helped hundreds of people go from, fat and overweight to super lean and healthy. And I'm going to be kind of deriving a plan for you. Okay. And that's a lot better. Now there's a level of interest for, oh my God, there's a face behind it. There's a name behind it. I kind of know who I'm going to be speaking to. I know what the next step's going to be like, rather than just saying, okay, yep, you're booked in. Check for an email. There's going to be a Zoom link in there, and then one of our team members is going to get back to you. Okay, so try to gas it up a little bit. Okay, just get them hyped for the call, and get them excited to go. Okay, the next is qualification. Okay, so you have to qualify obviously the leads that you are booking in. If you are booking in people who are just absolutely garbage, then you have to be okay with having bad conversations and just not being able to close people, because some people are just not meant to be helped. Some people just can't be closed. Okay. For qualification, you want to understand, okay, what is their budget? Okay. What is the timing of that decision? Okay. Do they want to make that decision now? If it's not now, when? Okay, cool. Are they the person to be making the decision? Are they the authority figure? Is that them? Do they have a partner involved? Do they have is their wife involved? Is their husband involved, etc.? Okay. And then is there a need to do that? Okay. And a need with timing now. Okay. So these are the basic sort of qualifications that you have to run people through when you're actually setting appointments. Because without one of these, then, the entire picture is screwed. The entire thing is messed up. If they don't have a budget, they can't afford it. If they don't want to do it now, then okay, what's the point of talking? If they're not the one to make the decision, then you're going to be convincing someone who's then going to go and try to convince their husband who doesn't have the same level of skills that you have. And that is obviously a waste of time. If they don't actually have an actual need or a pain involved, or, behind this decision, or a massive desire to get to the next level or to change their lives, then what are you selling, right? You're selling a change. And if they don't want that change, then how are you going to convince them to do something that they don't even want in the first place? So when there's this kind of common thing where people are like, you've probably seen on social media where people are like, oh, here, sell me this pen. And someone will say, oh, okay, I don't really want a pen. And then the other person will say, oh, well, you need this pen. This is the best pen. Okay? That's a waste of time. That's a waste of time. People need a base level of desire. People need a base level of, okay, even if it's 1%, okay? Even if it's 2%, they need something, okay? It doesn't have to be 100%, because if it's 100%, okay, great, it's a lay down close. But if it's just 1 or 2%, a salesperson can always take that small percentage and increase it in terms of urgency and doing it now and wanting to do it. But if it's 0%, 0 times 0 will always be 0, okay? 0 times a million will always be 0, okay? So you need a base level of desire. It doesn't have to be a lot, but enough for you to work off of and obviously get them involved and get to the next level, okay? The next step in terms of pre-selling and appointment setting is notes, okay? This is a really big one, okay? So if you're setting an appointment for yourself or if you're setting an appointment for the closer, you're gonna wanna make sure that there are notes for the closer, okay? You never want a customer to have to repeat themselves, okay? We've probably all been in when I was kind of starting out, customers, when they have to repeat themselves and they have to constantly be like, oh, I've already talked to this person about this, or blah, 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 blah with this, or, oh, I've explained this to you already so many times. They get kind of fed up and they feel like they're being asked the same question just for kind of sales purposes, and it leaves them with a bad taste in their mouth. So you want to try to have notes. Get your setter to take notes so that he can pass those notes off to the closer. And you could put those notes under the calendar booking or in the actual CRM so that closer can see before the call. And that closer with, 5 minutes, it literally takes 5 minutes before to do a little research, look through the application, read through their stuff. Not even, it takes 60 seconds to read through an application, okay, and actually understand, get to know their, where they're at, where they're at in the world, where they're looking, look through their stuff, look through this. It takes a little bit of prep. But that little bit of prep receives outsized returns if you're able to actually do that. So make sure that your setter has the notes or you have notes for yourself so you're not forgetting things when you're actually taking the call, okay? Because you don't want people to repeat themselves. You can get people to actually, obviously with the closer, they're going to have to go through and repeat probably some things that they said to the setter, but that's the right person to have to repeat it to, the person who's going to be actually processing the payments, okay? So have notes. You're going to get a lot more success once you have those. And when you're taking a sales conversation, okay, it's very casual just to have some notes and just write some stuff down. Even when I'm on a sales call, I'll be writing some stuff. I'll do a little doodle. Okay. It's very important to have just some notes because it's very natural as well to have that. So yeah. Okay. So cool. So now we're going to be talking about how the actual appointment setting process kind of looks from head to toe. Okay, so this is all about appointment setting. Okay, and I want you to kind of realize with appointment setting, it is pretty much a sales script condensed. Okay, so Our company will book, for each of our clients, maybe roughly around 3 to maybe 10 meetings, really dependent on where kind of they're at per day, based off of, obviously their circumstances and stuff. So I have a ton of experience in appointment setting, and I'm just going to kind of tell you what works and kind of the script we use. So all appointment setting is it's a condensed, okay, closing script. Okay. So a closing script is pretty much understanding someone's current situation, their desired situation, what's stopping them from getting to there. Okay, so like bottlenecks. Okay, what's stopping them from getting to their desired situation? And then why work with us? Like why me? Okay, why now? Get some qualification, and then a level of a pitch or an ask. Like this is where you're going to go about into your offer. And then after that would be a level of maybe like objection handling. Okay? So the way that I handle all of my calls is current situation, desired situation, what's stopping them, why me, why now? But I'm doing this it takes me maybe 5 to 13 minutes to do an actual appointment setting call. If you're doing this over text, it's the exact same thing, just over text. It's the exact same thing. But you're just doing this in a condensed format. In a closing call, you're going to want to go into more detail for obviously each of these individual sections, okay? But for a appointment setting call, you are going through them a little bit quicker to invoke the same kind of level of pain or want for your solution, okay? So with appointment setting calls, how they all start out, okay? I'm going to link the script as well below for you guys to check out. I have like an entire workflow of like, if this, do this, if this, do this, but I'm going to give you kind of the overall explanation right here of how this kind of works out on a scripting level. And you're going to want to get your appointment setters and your entire team, even for closing, this is very prevalent as well. Tell everyone to follow the script, okay? Because if your script is bad, you're going to find out if everyone is following the script, if your script is bad. Okay, because if everyone's following it 100% and you're not getting any sales, then you're going to find out. But if everyone is maybe kind of following the script and some people are not, then you're not going to see if the actual script is working and you're not going to be able to replicate it. So same with appointment setting, get people to follow the script. Okay, so how appointment setting calls work, okay? The first thing that you should be doing on appointment setting calls is finding a level of, get them to recognize who's calling. Okay. The way I do this is I pick up the phone, give them a dial, and I say, hey, is this stutter a little bit? Hey, is this John? Okay. Slow, stutter. I'm not using a massive like, hey, is this John? How are you? I'm not saying that. Hey, is this John? I'm saying it's slow. And I'm saying it's slow. They're like, sorry, who's calling me? Like, what, sorry? They get confused. They get curious. Okay, that's good. We want them to be curious. We don't want them to immediately be like, oh my God, sales guy, hang up. Okay? So we want them to, we're going to say that, hey, oh yeah, it's just Ashton with, blah, 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 blah. You reached out to us to maybe get some help with X or Y, does that ring a bell? So for fitness, hey, you reached out to us, maybe Facebook or Instagram, to get some help with losing some weight or maybe toning up. Does that kind of ring a bell? Okay. You're going to want to get them to acknowledge and understand. A lot of these people, you're going to realize they've reached out to maybe 5 or 10 different companies because they're in a state of pain, whatever. And a lot of people are not going to recognize, or a lot of people are just going to be like, sorry, I don't remember. And you're going to have to say, well, oh, yes, I do remember. And the speed of which you reach out to people is going to obviously help with this as well. But you're going to want to get people to acknowledge that they did. If you can't get past that, then you're not going to be able to get to the next step of appointment setting. Okay, so get people to understand who's reaching out and acknowledge okay, that they have reached out. Oh yes, I may have reached out a little bit ago, but I kind of forgot. Can you kind of fill me in? That's good. We can now go to the next step. Okay. Now we're going to set kind of a small agenda. So this is actually, I should have included a little portion here. This is before you actually dive into current situation, all that sort of stuff. This is, getting them to acknowledge that you're who's calling, and then setting the agenda. Okay. So they understand who you're calling. You're kind of doing that tonality that I expressed to you there. You're getting people to say, yes, this does ring a bell. And then you're going to the next step, which is setting kind of a small agenda. You're going to say, hey, listen, is it cool if I ask you a couple questions to kind of see even if we can help? Is it cool if I ask you a couple questions about, helping you lose weight to see even if we can help you? Is that cool if I ask you some questions? Cool. And then now you can go into the current situation. So you're just going to ask them if it's cool to ask them questions. Okay? Because if you don't, what I've found, this is kind of higher level, but if you go directly from like a, yes, this rings a bell to, okay, cool. Well, what are you doing right now with your fitness goals? Or what's happening? And then people are going to kind of be like, they'll maybe answer a couple questions and then they'll say, hey, well listen, I kind of have to go right now. If you set the agenda and say, hey, is it cool if I ask you some questions to see even if we can help? Because maybe we can't help. Okay. Then people will either say, now's a really bad time. Can you call me back in 10 minutes? Or they'll say, yeah, go ahead. And they'll expect the questions that are coming. They'll understand that, okay, this guy is going to be asking me questions. The agenda has been set by this guy. Therefore, I'm understanding of this process and I know what's going to be happening. Okay, so set that mini agenda. Hey, is it cool if I ask you a couple of questions for a little bit just to see even if we can help? Maybe we kind of can't. Is it cool if I ask you some questions? Cool. And then now you can jump into their current situation. Okay, so now you're going to jump into, hey, what's going on? Okay, what are you trying to do? Like what's happening in your current life? What are you going to the gym? Are you following a diet? What's going on in your current situation? You're going to want to try to get as deep as you can, without having to, like, for example, if someone says, oh, I want to lose weight because I want to look good and feel good. That's not an answer. Okay. That's them kind of deflecting. You want them to, if you can respond to the question by saying, so what? Okay. Then you haven't gone deep enough. So you want to get them to obviously like say, okay, I want to lose weight because, I've been really wanting to do this for a lot of years and this is something that's super important to me. Okay. Makes sense. Or, I want to lose weight because I've been unhealthy for this long and now is the time I have to change. Okay. Very important distinction between those two. One's an emotional response of, oh my God, I need this. This is a deep answer. Another one's like a deflection. Sales is all about emotions. Okay. So that first section is all about, what is their current situation? The next is their desired, right? So where do you want to go? What's going on? Why do you want to get there? You want to lose weight, you want to gain muscle. What does that process look like? What does the dream look like? Why even go for the dream anyway? Like, why do you want this outcome? Okay. And then what's stopping them? Like, why do you need help? What's stopping you? Why can't you do this by yourself? Okay. Why do you need a professional? Why do you need me to help you with this? Okay. Anyone can lose weight. Anyone can make money online. Why do you need extra help with this process? What's stopping them from doing it on their own? Okay. And then after that, you can do a couple, I want to group these as more qualification questions. Okay. More questions that will be individual to why me? Okay. Why do you want me to help you with this? Okay. Why do you want me? Okay. Why now? Why not in 6 months from now? Okay, just add a little bit of qualification to get them to kind of feel and committed to you. And then after this, you're going to go for your presentation, your pitch, your ask, your offer. And the way you're going to do this is you're going to say, okay, cool. Thanks for kind of, telling me a little bit more about yourself. Is it cool if I ask you is it cool if I tell you a little bit about kind of what the process sort of looks like so I can, show you kind of how this could maybe help you? Yeah, sure, go ahead. And then you're going to jump into your little bit of your pitch or your ask, your offer. So we do this, we help people go from X to Y. Most people do it like this, we do it like this, and here's why we're a little bit different, blah, 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 blah. Don't go into too much detail, especially on the appointment setting call. Just give them a base level of information about the transformation, okay? And then make your offer. Your offer should be something along the lines of, hey, we only have, we're giving away, or we're doing this. Okay, we're giving away, this is a very common offer I run in fitness. We're giving away 10 free strategy sessions, or sometimes I even label them as fat loss calls. This is industry specific. Okay, or discovery or walkthrough calls. We're giving away 10 of these. We were giving away 10 of these over the past couple days. I have a couple more left. Okay, you're going to want to be very careful with the false scarcity there. You're going to want to really kind of slow down and say, hey, yeah, we have, let me just double check. I think we have 2 more left. Yeah, we got 2 more left. Kind of correct yourself. We got 2 more left. I can maybe get you booked into one of these. Let me just pull up the calendar. Don't get their acknowledgement. Don't let them say, yes, I want this. Don't get them to do that. Just get them to not say no, pretty much. Okay? Then you're going to just say, hold up, let me pull up the calendar. Okay? And let me see if we have any spots available for you. The frame is, let me see if I have spots available for you, not, oh, do you please want a spot? Do you please want... We don't want them to view us as a low status creature. Okay? Going to pull up the calendar. You're going to find 2 spots. Okay, this is just very, very basic. You're going to find 2 spots. Hey, I have a couple spots this week. What does your availability usually look like throughout the week? Do you work Monday to Friday? Get some information. Oh, yeah, I work 9 to 5. Monday to Friday, my weekends are free. Get a base level of information. Then you're going to offer them 2 spots. Okay, yeah, well, I have a Monday after your work around 5:36, or I have a Saturday at this spot. Which one works better for you? Give them 2 options. It's the easiest way to do it, and let them kind of choose from there. If they give you an objection around this time, they'll usually say something along the lines of, oh, well, what's the price? Can you tell me the price before? That's the biggest one. The biggest objection they're going to say is price, or, oh, can you give me a call later? In this case, if they ask for price, I'm just going to give you the base level of how to overcome this in the appointment setting stage. If they ask for price, all you're going to say is, hey, that's why we're giving away these free sessions, so that if we can, or so that we can understand you a little bit more, so that we can see if we can help you, so that we can see what's going on with you. Because our program is a little bit more custom. It's not like cookie cutter where the same thing is going to be applied to everyone. So that's why we're giving away these sessions, to understand you a little bit more, see what's going on, see if we can even help. And then once we know that, we'll definitely kind of walk you through the process in full. Does that make sense? Cool. And if they keep harping, you can do something called you can give a mechanic example. So you say, hey, Linda, do you have a car? Oh yeah, I do have a car. Well, when you call your mechanic and you say, hey, I think there's something wrong with my car, does the mechanic just say, okay, cool, I can fix it for this much? Or does he say, hey, bring the car in, let me pop the hood, let me see what's going on, and then I can see what's the problem and see kind of what the pricing is? And they're going to say, yeah, of course. Yeah, so we kind of operate the same way. We want to come in, we want to see what's going on, and then from there, we'll be able to make a better kind of diagnosis. Does that make sense? Cool. Okay? So those are the basic sort of objections that you're going to be able to know in terms of pricing. Okay? In terms of, oh, can you send me an email? Can you do this? Blah, 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 blah. If you get that objection, price is more common, but if you get that objection, you probably messed up this part as a whole. You probably didn't really go into their desired, you didn't do that properly. If you're getting that, I would try to, maybe loop back into their current situation, maybe ask a couple qualifying questions. Well, why do you want to do this now? Why is this important to you? Like, blah, 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 and then see if you can loop them back in. But in that case, it's a little bit difficult. Remember, not everyone is meant to be booked into a calendar, okay? So that's pretty much the overall of how to appointment set on a very base level. I'm going to link my script below in terms of appointment setting so you can read through it. It's a flow chart that you guys can have for free. It's more positioned for some of my in-person brick and mortar gyms and online coaches as well. So you guys are going to get a good understanding of that. Okay. The next step that we're going to be talking about is closing. Okay. So how to close and how to actually handle people who reach out and now we're on a call with them and now we have to collect the cash. This is no longer the appointment setting call. This is now people on the call with us. Okay, so now we're going to be talking about closing, what that entire process looks like, and we're going to be taking it away from there. Okay, so the first step in closing is opening. So the sales call starts with you opening the call, and then closing is collecting the cash. So the first part of closing is opening the call. So first thing in terms of opening is all about how you set the agenda. It's the same with the appointment setting call, but you're going to want to set that agenda and get into it. So you can start the call. I like a lot of people, they'll do a little bit of small talk. You can hey, where are you calling in from? Oh, you're calling in from here. Super cool. Do a little bit. It could maybe be 60 seconds max. Don't force it. Because a lot of people, especially when they're booking calls, they're there for a reason. They're not there for small talk. And when you do small talk, these people know that you're small talking to try to find some likingness. So it comes off a little bit weird sometimes. Really depends on how you do it. But I would just simply hey man, how you doing today? Super cool. Where are you calling in from? Awesome. Nice. How's the weather down there? Your things are good? Cool. You ready to jump into it? Nice. That's it. Just say, you ready to jump into it? You ready to take things away? You ready to kick it off? Whatever it is, and get into it. Okay? Then you're going to set the agenda. Okay? So all the agenda that you're setting is you're going to tell them what's going to happen during the call and how you want them to be during the call. If you don't tell them how you want them to be, then they're going to be confused. They're not going to, you have to establish yourself as the status authority figure here. And if it's you randomly just being jump into questions, then they're not going to be knowing of how you want them to act. So you're going to set the agenda. Hey, I'm super excited to jump on this call. Pretty much how these calls typically go is I'm going to show you, I want to learn a little bit more about kind of where you are right now, where you're trying to get to, and see if we can even help in the first place. Once I kind of understand you a little bit more, then I'm going to obviously kind of walk you through what we do and how we do it. Does that sound fair? Get them to say yes. If people don't say yes to this, then you're screwed. Oh, well, I just want to know the price. Or, oh, I'm here to just, kind of see, I'm here to see my options. You got them, you have to get them to acknowledge. If they don't, then you're just going to say it again. Hey, yeah, so, typically what we do is, I want to ask you a couple questions, see what's going on, see if we can even help. And then I can kind of dive into stuff a little bit later. Does that make sense? Are you cool with that? No? Say it again. Just keep looping until they get acknowledged. It's like you got to pass level 1 to get to level 2. You got to pass level 2 to get to level 3. It's the same sort of process. Okay. So get them to acknowledge that. And if they don't, then it's tough. You have to get that acknowledgement. So get them to say yes to that agenda frame, okay? What's going to be happening during that call. That's going to establish you as kind of the person asking, the authority, the status figure, the person who knows, and they're inquiring to you. It's the frame where in closing, you have to be viewed as the status person, the person who they are coming to. You are not going to them. You are not chasing them. They are coming to you, okay? So set that agenda. The next step is you are going to ask an opening question. So the opening question, okay, that you have to ask with every sales call is, why did you book a call? What's the reason for reaching out? Okay, why did you book a call? And the reason why we're doing this, instead of jumping into the current situation immediately, is we want to allow them to have a kind of we want to allow them to start where it's painful. So if you walk into the doctor's office and the doctor immediately starts to assume things and starts to say, hey, so, what does your diet look like right now? What is this? Blah, 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 blah. The doctor's assuming that the patient doesn't know, okay? If the doctor's starting with, hey, what's the reason for you coming in today? Oh, well, I broke my leg. Points to the leg. Okay, let's start there, where the pain is. So same thing with closing call. Hey, what's the reason for you jumping on? Well, why'd you reach out in the first place? Then allow them to kind of lead the pain, and that's going to give you more ammo. Remember, the more they open up about pain, the more data they give you, the more ammo we have in our gun in order to make the pitch custom, right to them, allow them to feel understood, etc. So get them to lead with that pain, okay? Cool. The next step is obviously your current situation. So remember, this is the exact same as the appointment, okay? What is their current situation? What is their desired situation? What's holding them back, okay? This is the exact same process. What's holding them back, okay? You can add some qualification questions in here. Why us? Why do you need our help? And then, especially with closing calls, you have to do a consequence question, okay? All a consequence question is you are going to ask, if nothing changes, what happens? Okay? And then after that, you're going to say, okay, cool. It's cool if I share my screen, kind of show you a little bit about the process. Then you're going to make your presentation. Okay? Then, after your presentation, comes your offer. And then potential objections. Okay? So we're going to be talking about your presentation a little bit. So when you're making your presentation, you want it to be viewed through rose-tinted glasses. So your presentation doesn't have to be good. It doesn't have to be incredibly amazing. But what it does have to be is it has to be viewed through rose-tinted glasses. What I mean by this is if for example, this is a horrible example, but there are cases where there will be domestic violence, okay? Yet the wife or the victim of the domestic violence will still stick up for the husband. Why? Because she's viewing the husband through rose-tinted glasses. So it's the same thing with you and your presentation. Presentation doesn't have to be absolutely amazing. All it has to do is show them the solution to their pain. It has to say, hey, you're here. I can bring you here by following this process that I obtain. And what I mean by rose-tinted glasses is if you did the previous part of the sale correctly, you spent time with them in their desired situation, you got through all of the emotional questions, and you were able to respond, and you weren't able to respond with so what, and you actually dug deep with them, then they should have a level of emotional conviction. These people know, maybe halfway or maybe a quarter of the way through the call, if they're actually going to buy or not. People don't make the decision if they're going to buy at the end of the call. They don't just say, oh, you made the offer? Yes. They make their decision emotionally early on in the call. Okay, so when you're making your presentation, they're viewing it through rose-tinted glasses. They're viewing it through, oh my God, yeah, like this is exactly what I needed, even though it's a basic presentation, just taking their pain and showing them the solution, okay? And that's pretty much with your presentation. So all in all, like the logistics of your presentation, I would recommend sharing your screen, okay? This is very important. Giving your sales guys, a templatized screen sort of thing that shows them obviously like what the process is. You want to obviously have this as the exact same thing for all of your sales guys and not let them do it individually, because then you won't see if it's working or not. So give your sales guys a templatized sort of process, get them to share their screen. All you're doing is you're explaining the steps in the process. The best thing that you can do is make your steps 3 steps maximum. People are able to, if something is like 30 steps, they're like, oh my God, this is like a lot of like comprehending. Remember, they're in an emotional state. They're like, oh, I want to buy. I'm like nervous. I want to change my life. They're in a scary change. Like change is scary for people. So you don't want to overstimulate people. Give 3 steps. like the three tenets or the three pillars of getting you from X to Y. Like, make it kind of a simple sort of mechanism to explain to them. Okay? Make sure it's all tied back to their individual scenarios. So if you're making a presentation and you're saying, and this part we're going to be pretty much, giving you a diet so that, you can lose that 30 pounds and hang out with your kids on the beach, kind of like what you said. So tie it back to their individual thing that they said. And that's pretty much the basis of a presentation. You're going to want to share a screen. You're going to share steps. And then I would also include some sort of testimonials or client results. Okay? You don't want this to come off as qualifying, because it's very easy to fall into the qualifying frame and just be like, oh yeah, look at how cool I am. Please work with me. Look at my client success. It's really, you have to make sure that you are doing it in a strategic way. And the way that I do it is I say, yeah, and kind of with these 3 steps, what I kind of walk you through here. We brought John, kind of similar position to you. We brought him from X to Y, kind of through these 3 steps. John was, struggling with this and this and this, and kind of just share your screen and kind of walk maybe them through a couple client results and say, yeah, this is, the wins tab, or this is the whatever, where we keep all of our stuff. As you can see, we've had a fair amount of people who have, gone through this transformation. So yeah, we can definitely help you with that. Or yeah, as you can kind of see, cool. Okay. And then after that, after you make the presentation, you're going to want to get them, this is a big portion. Okay. You're going to want to get them to, I didn't mean to do that. You're going to want to get them to say that they need this. Okay. What I mean by this is most people, after they make the presentation, they specifically just go into the pitch. They say, okay, cool. The pitch is done. Let me just jump into, the presentation is done. Let me just jump into the pitch and let me explain this to you. You're going to want to get them after this pitch or after this presentation. You're going to want to ask them and double down. Okay. Does this feel like something that'll work for you? Okay. Why so? Okay. Why me? Why this process? Okay. Do you feel like this will work for you? Okay. A lot of people maybe feel like this will not work for them individually. Why do you feel like this will work for you? Okay. Very important distinctions as well. So you're going to want to get that and get them to say, yes, I feel like this process 100% will change my life. And based off of their tonality, you can rank it on a scale. So 0 to 10. How this looks is, if you're like, so, this process that I kind of walked you through, John, do you feel like this process will, 100% kind of work for you? Yeah, I feel like this process will maybe kind of work for me. Let's say that's a 3 out of 10 in terms of conviction. Oh my God, yes, I need this process. This process I honestly think could 100% change my life. If I definitely put the work and I see what you're saying, I see how this kind of works. That's a 10. Okay? So you can judge that before you even say the number, because you got to realize after you say the number, they are now in a state of fear. They're like, oh my God, that's a lot of money. Or, oh my God, this bad guy take my money, subconsciously run away. Okay? But you have to make sure that they're 100% sold before you say the number. Make sure that they're 100% in. Okay? So if they're a 3 out of 10, yeah, I maybe feel like this could help me. Well, I'm not sure if this could maybe help me. You got to do more work. Okay? And then once you get them through that process and you're jumping into the offer, which is basically your pricing and your pricing model, okay, then you are going to say, okay, cool. For this transformation, our program or whatever is this many months, okay? And for this many months, it is $5,000 or whatever your price is, Okay? You're going to state the price and then you are going to shut up. This is a big mistake a lot of new people make. A lot of new salesmen that I see coming into my organization or within working with partners, they say the price and they say, oh yeah, it's this much, but you'll like it or blah, 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 and they try to justify it. Just say the price and shut up. Okay? You're going to be like, they're already sold. If they've already said yes to all this sort of stuff and they're already like emotionally in, then you're just going to be putting yourself at a detriment. So say the price and shut up. Okay? After you say the price, then we're obviously coming into objections. Okay? They're either going to take it two ways. They are going to pretty much say, okay, cool. Well, how does the process work from here? Can we move forward? Yeah, well, we're pretty much just going to, process your investment. Never say payment. Always use, investment. We're going to process your investment, and then we're going to move forward right here on that call. Does that sound fair enough? Yes? All right, cool. Okay? And then you're going to move forward with them on that call right there. Say, okay, I'm just going to send you the payment link right now. Do you have your card handy? Do you have your wallet handy? Okay, cool. Why don't you go grab that for me, and I'm going to get the link prepared for you. I'm just going to put myself on mute really quickly. Get them to get their card. If they say, oh, it's in another room, can I process it later? Yeah, I'll just put myself on mute. Go grab that for me. I'll be waiting here, okay? Sounds good. Cheers, okay? Get them to go get their shit. Get them to come back. Get them to process it on that call. Send them the link. And during that process, don't be talking. This is another mistake. People say, okay, yeah, I'll move forward with the 5K or whatever. All right, cool. Sounds good. Here, I'm going to send you the link. And they start asking questions. They start saying like, oh, well, what are you doing later today? And blah, 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 blah. And like, it's not the moment to do that. Just shut up. They've already said yes. There's a scene in Moneyball where Brad Pitt was on the phone with a guy. And the guy said, yes, I will sign the contract to be the baseball player for the Oakland Athletics or whatever. And after the phone call, he just hung up. And the other guy in the film, he said, Jonah Hill, he said, why did you just hang up after that call? He said, yes, what else is there to do? And the same thing applies here. When they say yes, collect payment, shut up. After they've processed payment and the payment is in the database, you see it come through, by all means, talk about shit. Talk about whatever you want for the next little bit, but don't chat shit during that time. It's just going to invoke feelings of whatever or, stuff that we've tried to not do during this entire sales call. So don't do that, okay? So process that payment, and this is where obviously financing comes in, okay? If they, obviously give you a potential objection, you have to figure out if that's a financial objection, if it's actually they can't afford it, okay? Or if it is an emotional objection. These are only the two objections that someone can pretty much have. If it is it a certainty objection or is it a logical, financial, I can't do it right now? There are two kinds, logic and emotion, okay? Under logic would be finance, okay? There would be time, okay? But hopefully not time because, we've tried to screen for that as much as we can. Maybe like a partner is involved. Again, we that should have been qualified for. So the biggest thing you're going to come across is finance. And then emotion is they just don't feel certain. Okay? They just don't feel like this process could 100% help them. These are the only two objections you're going to get. If someone says, I want to think about it, okay? Oh, can you give me some time? I want to think about it. That's a smoke screen. Your job should be to figure out, okay, is this a logical objection or is this an actually, I don't feel certain about this process? And once you figure out, okay, I want to think about it. This is kind of a financial, I'm a little bit tight on money right now, blah, 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 blah. Then you can go and offer a level of financing, okay? I usually only offer the financing after I get an objection. So if people say, yeah, I can pay the 5K right now, just get them to pay the 5K. You don't have to bring them through a firm or a financing software or something like that. If they can pay it right there, get them to pay it. But if they give you a financial objection and you say, hey, listen, I have maybe some kind of other alternatives I can walk you through. Is it cool if I walk you through those? Yeah? All right, cool. If you're 100% bought into this and you feel like this can 100% help you and you're committed to this and you can do the work, then I can maybe see if we have some alternatives for you that can maybe help you out. Do you want to kind of explore those with me right here? Yeah, cool. Okay. And then you walk them through the financial objections. Okay. But if it's an emotional objection where they're like, oh, I don't know if I feel certain, they're not going to tell you that. They're going to say, I want to think about it. They're going to say, I want to talk. Okay. Talk to X. They're going to say, I want to think about it. I want to sleep on it. I want to talk to my wife. I want to, explore other options. I don't know if now is the time. They're going to maybe pull a lot of crap out of their ass. I want you to remember, this is mostly going to be a smoke screen most of the time. Okay. When people give an objection, I want to say about 90% of the time, it is going to be a smoke screen. They're not actually going to want to think about it. They're not actually going to want to talk to their wife. They're not actually going to want to, explore other options. It's either they logically don't think that this will work for them, or emotionally they don't feel certain enough to move forward with the process. And it's up to you to figure out which one of those is actually the case. So just to give you kind of a tip, a little tidbit, I'm going to link my sales script below as well for you guys to dig through that my partners kind of use and I use as well. But a little tidbit that you can kind of use for this to make this distinction, if it's like a actually logical, I can't afford it, but I want to do it, or an emotional, I don't know if I want to do it, you're going to ask, yeah, no, I totally understand. You're going to resonate with them. So the first step is resonate. Okay. You're never just going to want to dive into your objection handling. Well, what do you mean? Okay. Oh yeah, no, I understand kind of where you're coming from. Be friendly. Okay. You're going to want to connect with them. You're not going to want to combat it. When you are combating against an objection, now it becomes a battle. And what battles do is it invokes a level of resistance within them. They're going to feel tight. They're going to feel, I don't know if I want to do this. Okay. And that's not good. So you're going to want to resonate, be calm. Okay. You can slow down your pacing a little bit and resonate with them. That's the first step. Then you can jump into another question with them. Okay. You can clarify. So you feel like this, blah, 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 blah. And then your third step would be to ask a follow-up question. Okay. And that question will be, if you want to, just to give you that tip, is this more of a how I can do this? Or is this more of an if I should do this? Which one of those? So here, I'll just show you. So, yeah, I want to think about it. He's like, yeah, I want to think about it. Yeah, no, I totally get that you kind of want to process things and you kind of want to, go through the process, think about it a little bit. But, John, is this more of like a how I can do this? Or is this more of like, an if I should do this? Well, I really want to do this, but I just don't have the finances at the time. Okay? That's a how. How I can do this. I want to do it, but I don't know how I can. Well, I'm not really sure if I can do this. I just want to think about it. If they just double down, then it's an if, and you got to go and do some more emotional work and build with them and do that process with them. Okay, so this is a big distinction. I'm going to link the sales script below, but these are kind of the basics of overcoming objections. Remember, you're going to want to resonate with them. You're going to clarify. You can repeat what they said back to you so that they felt understood. Ask a question, and remember to never combat. Okay, most salespeople, what happens is they spend a lot of work doing the entire sales script. Maybe they spend 45 minutes doing the entire sales script, going through the entire thing, explaining everything. Takes a lot of effort. I understand. I've been there, done that. Okay, and then they get an objection, and then now they feel a little bit like, oh my God, why did I do all this work? And they start to get mad. They start to get angry. Okay. And that, even though it's not like direct, they can feel that energy. And then they'll start to close off even more. And then you're not going to do that. You're going to get someone to overcome an objection by feeling understood, by feeling, resonated with, by understanding that, maybe you've been in their position before, others have been in their position before, and slowly kind of walk them through that in a calm, collected manner. So not being combative is a big thing, okay? The last sort of stuff that I want to talk about in terms of closing that are very important is we talked about once you get a yes, shut up, process the payment, just stop doing that, all that sort of stuff. We talked about presentation. In terms of your offer, okay, and in terms of, going for your, overall stating your price, walking people through that, one of the biggest things that you should try to do is a lot of coaches will do this. They'll put up a screen with like 3 to 4 different like pricing options. This is a really big one. Okay, this is honestly horrible. Okay, you don't want to do this. You don't want to put up a screen and just say, hey, yeah, here are your 4 options. The premium pricing model, this pricing. You don't want to do that. Okay, you want to list one option and one price. Okay, if you're listing 3 to 4 pricing options, then what happens from that? There's going to be 3 to 4 different features and things within each package. Now they're focusing on the details. Now they're like more in a logical frame instead of being in that emotional sort of like, oh yeah, I really want to change. I'm in a state of pain, etc. One price, one presentation, one sort of process that you're explaining to them, and that's it. Don't confuse them. Just do one price. And the thing is, you should take, if you have 3 to 4 different pricing options, what you should do is take your highest ticket. So let's say you have 3 to 4, and let's say our highest ticket is $6,000. Okay. You should now take the other 3, okay, scrap those, and just pitch the 6K, okay, and see what people say, okay? If people say, oh, wow, that's way too much for me, and it's a logical financial objection, now you can always work backwards. You can now go from 6K and say, okay, well, maybe we have other options that I can explore for you. What's kind of your budget? What is the most you can kind of comfortably spend without wanting to, jump off a bridge sort of thing? I was kind of hoping to spend in the range of, 1 to 2K. And then now you can say, okay, cool, let's go talk about maybe some other options. Well, I have a package that I do, which includes this, and this. That is $1,500 or whatever, okay? And then you can go back to it. So if you pitch the highest, what happens is you'll get a lot of people who'll just be like, yep, cool, let's do it. But then you'll also get people who will be like, hey, I can't do it. And then you can always go back. So you're opening yourself up to the upside and you're not losing anything on the downside because you can always bring people back to a lower ticket model. Or even if it's I can't do the 6K, maybe bring them into financing, okay? Or pitch them the other package like I just said. So you can always work backwards. But if you pitch low and that person, let's say you pitch $1,000, but that person would have spent $5,000, you now missed out on $4,000 worth of value, okay? Which is going to take you 4 more clients to make up that value at $1,000 instead of just trying to pitch the $6,000, okay? And working backwards from that and still opening up the upside for people to spend the 6K. This is a big point that I want to make. A lot of fitness coaches, or coaches or coaching companies, just share their screen, they put their pricing packages. Well, which one do you kind of feel like would work the best for you? We have a couple options. I'm kind of thinking they're lost. Okay? And this brings us to our next point, which is getting lost in the details. Okay? Details are death. Okay? Details are logical. I want you to think of details as being like mathematic. Okay? Mathematics are logical. They are, not emotional. So when people are going through and there's so many details involved and they're asking a ton of questions and there's like all these small little things, it's too much for these people. It's bringing them out of an emotional headspace, and they're now focused on details, and now they're missing the bigger picture, which is the vacation and not the plane ride. Okay? You are selling a transformation. You are not selling the details. If people get caught up in the details and they're asking a ton of questions about this feature, this feature, this feature, you can answer the questions. Yes, go through that with them. But if it becomes too much, you got to zoom out and you got to tell them, hey, listen, our overall company is bringing people from X, where you are right now, to Y. Okay? And this is the process we do things. And if you want to keep doing things kind of the way that hasn't been getting you that much success, by all means, that's something you can keep doing. But this is the way kind of we do things to bring you to that point. Bring them out, zoom them out to the macro scale, and show them the bigger picture. Okay? Because details are death. And people will get into details and over ask questions. Okay, this is a big one. They will inquire about too many things. They will over ask. They're asking, so many detail-oriented questions about everything. And if you just blatantly this is the answer, they're just going to keep going. Okay? And the more questions they ask, the more you're losing your frame as the salesperson, because the person who actually asks questions is the person extracting value, the person who actually is the status person subconsciously. Okay? And then they're going to start to get lost in details, nitpick things, logically over concern. Now they're scared. Now they know the price. And remember, when people figure out the price, what happens? When people figure out the price, subconsciously, not even consciously, they start to think, bad guy, okay? Take my money. So I'm going to stop bad guy from taking my money subconsciously. Okay, this is just like consciously or subconsciously, we're meant to preserve our resources. We go out and we hunt for food, and we keep our food stored, and the bear doesn't take our food. Okay, and when you're going into all these details and there's so many nitpicks, then subconsciously they're gonna fall into this frame, and then they know the price, and then it's very difficult to get anywhere. Okay, so excuse me. So this is the biggest thing you want to work on. Never combat the objections. Understand that details are death. When people are over asking questions, it's just an absolute nightmare. You can answer a couple, get them to feel a level of clarity, but they shouldn't. And logically, it's impossible for them to know everything about the process before even joining. Okay, it's impossible. It's like buying a car with knowing everything about the car. It's like, have you driven the car for a year? You're probably gonna have a different perspective after a year of driving the car versus now when you buy the car. So it's impossible for them to know. Ask them or let them ask the questions, and then kind of go back into the frame and zoom out to the macro. And the last thing to focus on in the last portion of this training is all about mindset and conditions to succeed. Okay? And I know a lot of people don't talk about mindset, but it's very important to understand just the base level. I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but this is a very important step in terms of understanding sales, managing your team. Okay? So what you have to realize when you're managing a sales team, when you're doing anything, is that sales related, is that nothing will be overnight. Okay? A lot of people expect to have a closer just placed, and then now they're, living in Miami and they're making passive income. Okay? Nothing happens overnight. It's going to take a lot of work to train people. It's going to take a lot of work to get people accustomed. You're going to have to get your sales reps accustomed with your back end. You're going to have to get a system together. And even if you have a good system right now, when you push a lot of, leads through it, or salesmen through it, or, run a process that seems to be good 100 times, You're going to find kinks in a process no matter what you're doing. Okay? So you have to understand that everything is iterative. And it should be like that because you have, again, your input put into a system. You get an output from that. And then you have feedback. And the only way a system gets better and you get better inputs to put into a system is through feedback. So you have to understand with everything you do, sales related, if it's taking the calls yourself, if it's taking the appointment setting calls yourself, which is fine when you're starting out, if it's managing your team, if it's building out your entire system to manage all your sales reps, if you see it, with your customer success agents, with your, overall CRM, with everything you do, it is an iterative process. I've never launched a sales system and it just blows up initially and it's just absolutely incredible from the jump. It never happens. Okay? It always takes time. It always takes iteration. It always takes doing something, failing, doing it again, failing less, doing it again, and just keep on doing it until we've reached a point where we are really dialed in on all of the things we are doing. Okay, so nothing is overnight. And especially with sales, it's going to take a lot of work. If you're selling yourself or managing your team or whatever you're doing, it's going to take iteration. Your system will never be good. And even if you buy a system, even if you go out and try to buy an infrastructure or buy a process, it's still going to take time for you to adjust. It's still going to take time for new reps to adjust. So nothing is overnight. And you have to drill this into your brain. Set the personal expectation that you will do this for the next X amount of time without focusing on your output, by only trying to focus on your input and making these inputs better through the feedback you're getting and just doubling down on that. That's how I got better at sales. That's how I got better at managing sales teams. That's how I got better at building sales teams, by finding good people. That's how I got better at everything sales systems related, sales related, everything. Okay? Is by simply focusing on, okay, this right here. How do I focus on my inputs and try to emotionally disconnect from the outputs? How do I do that? Because if I cannot care but take note of my outputs, get feedback on those, then I can just focus on my inputs and making my inputs better. So it's very critical to focus on this and understand that nothing's going to happen overnight. There's two kinds of people who do this. I can guarantee you this right now. There's going to be the type of person who wants to learn sales, who wants to build their team, or who wants to do anything sales related and expects overnight results. They see the people online, they think that they should have overnight success, and those are the people who are expecting failure. If you're going to go on a run and you're expecting the run to be easy and then the run becomes hard, then now you've put yourself in the wrong mental framework to even go on the run. But if you go on a run and you're expecting it to be hard and you come across hard, you come across pain, you come across barriers, then now what's going to happen? You're, okay, this is expected. I understood that this is going to happen, and I'm going to try my best to overcome these barriers. Okay? So this is the biggest thing to understand. I'm not going to give you mental sort of frameworks that you're going to need, but these like small sort of stuff or tips or tricks, but this is the biggest thing. If you can focus on your input to output system, focus on getting feedback, then that is the best thing you need, and disconnecting emotionally from the outputs. And that's everything in terms of your overall sales system. What I'm going to do for you guys is I'm going to link below my sales script, my appointment setting script, and some objection handling scripts as well that are going to mind map, break down everything for you, all for free. So if you made it to the end right here, congratulations. You guys are going to have access to those below. Get in there, read up, get educated. And if you are someone who has a sales team or is managing closers or is wanting to build out a sales team for an offer, then I hope that this was successful for you. And I hope that this gave you some insight into how I kind of manage my teams and pretty much overall allow people to see just more success with their system and just have a better time in this game called business. So thanks for watching, and I hope this was productive for you.